Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Psychedelic Chat from the Organization of Psychedelic and Entheogenic Nurses. I am Angela Ward. Hang on, we're going to hold off with Shelley for just a second. I wanted to just invite everybody as you're coming in and please put your, say hellos in the chat. Please let us know where you're watching from. Let us know your license. We're always interested in knowing who's here in the audience. Before we begin, I just want to make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because that really helps us spread the word. So make sure you ring the bell so you can be alerted when we're going to go live with some other people that we'll be interviewing throughout 2023. But today I am honored to be speaking with the lovely Shelley Wininger, RN. Shelley is a mother, a grandmother, and a retired critical care nurse that spent 40 years caring for patients. After leaving her first husband, she soon met Charley and began her new life as his partner in crime. She is the muse for and sine qua non of Listening to Ecstasy, Charley's book on the transformative power of MDMA. There's so much more this lovely woman has to share with us. So please welcome Shelley to the Psychedelic Chat. Hello, Shelley.
Hello.
So good to see you. Thank you for joining us here. I can see people are popping in where they're from in the chat. It's so cool. I don't know if there was a very first comment that said, much love and admiration to a very special lady. So it sounds like you have some fans in the audience. That's so wonderful. So we're going to just have a conversation, and then when we get close to the end, we'll open it up for comments or for questions. We love your questions. So as you hear questions during this conversation, get ready to ask them towards the end. You have been a nurse or had been a nurse for a long time. And, once you're a nurse, you're always a nurse. Tell us a little bit about your trajectory of your nursing career and then how you came in to psychedelics.
Well, I graduated nursing school in 1972 when things were a little bit different. We even had glass thermometers, and I can't tell you how many I broke trying to shake them down. Yeah. And I loved on-the-job training. I did not like school, but get me in where we can learn to give shots and learn to do this and learn to do that. Machines I was in. And I always loved the action. So I always loved either emergency room, I did ER, I did CCU. And the last 19 years before I went out on disability, I did PACU, which recovery room, which was my favorite until it wasn't. And I went out, my disability was, I have coronary artery disease. I have 6 stents.
Wow.
And my job was stressful. And when I started getting chest pain on a quiet night, I knew it was time to get out. And I did.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. I was 60 years old. 60? Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd been married to Charley for a while by that point.
No, I didn't know. Oh, wait. Yeah, of course. Duh. I met Charley in 2000. So, yeah.
Yeah. How did you get curious about psychedelics, about MDMA? How did that happen for you?
Well, it kind of started on my 48th birthday is when I left my husband and my first husband and went to a divorce lawyer. And I remember thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. So that opened up anything that I obviously felt was safe. And a few months after moving out, my kids stayed with him. I went to a local Y that was giving like they had guest speakers, and Charley was a guest speaker talking about singles. And I liked him, but I didn't really have much interaction with him, a little bit. But he he thought maybe I would sign up for his workshop, but I didn't. It was in Brooklyn, too far away for me. Of course, now I live in Brooklyn, but that's another story. But when I saw him again 2 months later, I knew he was going to be there. And I went, I flirted, I let him know I was interested. And 2 days later, he called me. And on our first date, he told me he had been a hippie. Now, of course, I was nursing in nursing school. I graduated high school in 1969, and I was in nursing school from 69 to 72. And I was a goody-goody. Oh, my goodness, such a goody-goody. Didn't smoke cigarettes, occasional glass of wine. That was about it. I remember going, it's in my husband's book, how when I was in nursing school, I went to a frat party, and I met a guy, and he took me to his particular frat house, and there were a whole bunch of people sitting in a circle passing a joint. I ran out. I'm like, oh no, my parents will kill me if I get busted. So
you were not a hippie, is what you're saying.
No, the only thing I liked was I liked to dress kind of cool. I didn't dress with my collars up to here. I liked the style. I liked the idea of a hippie, but I couldn't be one.
So then you meet this lovely guy,
and he corrupted
me. A hippie.
He corrupted me.
Oh yeah.
So first thing was cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had my first mushroom trip in October. I think it was October of 2000, something like that. Maybe a little more. And then I had my first acid trip. And it wasn't until a little bit later that my son had told me about MDMA. And he kind of explained to me what it feels like. It was his favorite. And I told Charley, I want to try him. I want to try ecstasy. That's how we called it back then. And we were at a party. Actually, it was the opening of a Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in Cosm in Manhattan, which is the big art, psychedelic art by Alex and Allison Gray.
Wow.
And after the opening, they moved into the next room, which was there was a rave going on. And I turned to Charley and I said, oh my goodness. Now I had tried ecstasy once. Sorry, I had tried it once. And that was amazing. So when we went to the party, I'm like, oh, I wish I could try some ecstasy here. And he went away, came back about a minute later here, gave me a little pill. And I danced and danced and danced. And I said, he had to drag me out. And I kept saying, now I get it. So I loved it. I loved it the first time I did it. I loved and I loved it. Now I love it every time I do it.
I have so many questions about that. So it sounds like you came to psychedelics much later in life, and you were still working at the time. How did experimenting with psychedelics and MDMA affect your nursing practice?
First of all, because we're older, we respect these medicines. We're not like some kids who do it every weekend. We actually, even now, 20 some odd years later, we do it maybe 5-6 times a year. So we only did ecstasy and MDMA a few times a year. LSD, I think I did it once. The only thing that at that point, when I first started doing things, so everything was spaced out. So as far as my mentation, I was totally with it. It never altered. It never made me like stoned, because even cannabis, I did it one, like at a night. And by the next morning, I was me again. But what MDMA did, and other psychedelics actually, it gave me more empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to see these patients more, not just a diagnosis, these were people. And in fact, I was a preceptor in PACU, and I would tell my students, just remember, these patients are people, and you are to treat them like you want to be treated, like you want your parents to be treated, your grandparents to be treated. And that because I would see doctors come in and take a sheet and pull it off the patient and examine the patient and then leave and not bother to cover the patient up. And it used to drive me crazy.
Mm.
So I loved my patients. I loved being able to give them pain medication so that when they left, they could smile. That's what I liked about PACU. They come in, you take care of them, and they leave. I could never do real bedside nursing. I did it for 1 year, and that was it.
Well, it takes all different kinds, that's for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Did you ever worry about any backlash from your employer or licensing agencies? And like, how did you make sure you were safe in that way?
I kept quiet.
Yeah.
I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we started having a community. And what we did was we started a potluck dinner. And actually, 2023 is going to be our 20th year
A
of doing
potluck
these
dinner in your
through
psychedelic
maps.
community, or
We started through maps.
oh wow.
And yeah, what happened was they put out an email saying that there's going to be a television show, a movie, documentary with Peter Jennings, who was a Canadian, or he was an ABC commentator. And it was all about ecstasy. It's called Ecstasy Rising. You can still find it on YouTube.
Oh wow.
I found it a few weeks ago, in fact. So yeah.
Ecstasy Rising.
Ecstasy Rising. And it was actually very positive about ecstasy.
Mm-hmm.
And Charley and I had just moved in together. So after these people left, people came to our house, we watched the movie, we talked about it, and then they left. We realized this is it. This is our community.
Mm-hmm.
And we started running these potlucks where people felt safe, because we make people understand that you cannot talk about what's going on here outside. I mean, you can tell what you did, but it's confidential.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only way I could really share. I could really talk about it. I couldn't. Actually, there was one nurse whose husband grew pot, and she knew. And then there was a doctor. I don't know how it came up. Actually, it was the head of anesthesia. And I don't remember how it came up, but he said, "Oh, I love acid."
Really? So it
Yes.
kind of sounds like there have been people in nursing and medical professions exploring psychedelics and such for a
Yep.
while.
Yep.
Um, and you did say that it benefited your compassion, empathy for your patients. And now we're in a time where maybe, we can't be quite as we can't be open about it still, unfortunately, but I think we can express our scientific interests a bit more. So how do you envision nurses specifically in the future of psychedelic therapy, research, or care, psychedelic care?
Oh, I wish I were younger. Man, if I were younger and still had, I mean, I stopped paying for my license because I said I'm never going back to work again. If I were younger, the first thing I would do would be to get training and learn to sit, even though it's still underground. I
Mhm.
would I would do that because there are so many people who are hurting out there, and they can't get it unless if they don't qualify. Somebody I know is my age, and she doesn't qualify for any of these. Uh, what am I trying to say?
Clinical trials and
Yeah,
things
that's
like
the
that. Yeah.
word. That's another thing about getting old. You forget words. Clinical trial,
Yeah.
clinical trials. She said she's 70. She, has this terrible depression. And underground is the only way she can go.
Mm. Mhm.
And we're trying to help as best as, and this is the way that you can help people.
Yeah.
Learn to be the one thing you do have to be, from what I'm told. I've never sat with a patient or anything, but yep, you learn to be patient
Mm.
with these medicines. And so if anybody wants to do it, first get some kind of training.
Mhm.
Because somebody said, why don't I sit with Charley?
Mm.
And my fear, one of my biggest fears was, I don't know if I could sit for, I mean, he doesn't sit, but from people who do sit, if I wanted to be with them to help them, I'm afraid I wouldn't know what to say.
Mm. Mhm.
And so you need training. You need some training, um, and patience
Mhm. Absolutely.
and empathy. Yeah.
And empathy. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely important. Do you so I know that I think you shared when we talked briefly before this interview, there have been times when you've kind of offered some psychedelic support at maybe an event that you've gone to where, someone might be having a difficult time. What do you think some of your qualities are that you were able to bring to that person that was struggling more in the wild at a party, festival, something like that?
Soothing, um, and patience, and being able to tell them it will pass.
Mhm.
It will, because one of my first mushroom trips, Charley had to give me an index card that said, you took magic mushrooms, you will come down. Because I kept saying, I am going to come down, right? I was scared
Mhm.
until he gave me that card and said, I will come down. I will come down.
Yeah.
So you have to be, yeah, soothing and make sure they're hydrated. I remember giving one guy, he was sweating up a storm at it was a rave birthday party. And he was like, so just sweating up a storm. And I said, here, drink. I gave him some of my water.
Yeah.
So, not to be intrusive, but to be, just to be there. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's really something about the comfort that nurses can provide of just, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like your color looks good, let's make sure you're drinking water and you're safe and that kind of thing seems like a good quality that we can bring to this type of work. I wonder what advocacy roles do you see nurses taking in terms of changing laws or policies or maybe working in harm reduction? How about that?
Nurses are respected. We're like one of the top. I remember reading, and I felt so proud. We're one of the top jobs that people respect.
Yeah, I think we were the number one most respected profession for the last 19 out of 20 years.
I believe it. Yeah.
So it's really wonderful. Thank you for being honest and sharing your experience because I think that could open some eyes, um, that you've had these experiences and you had a successful nursing career. You're not
Yeah.
in a loony bin or something like that.
Well, here's the thing. Well, when I speak about Charley's book, I say that he write the book is about MDMA. It's a love story about MDMA and Charley and me and the community. It's kind of like a multifaceted love story. And one of the things I do when I talk about the book, I say, if I ask, do you know what MDMA is? And they'll be like, no, yeah, I've heard about it. And I'll say, and I'll start by saying how it's been so successful with PTSD. They're having such success. I legitimize it. I'm not going to say, yeah, 4, 5, 6 times a year I take it and I'm with friends and this and that and I've danced with it. That sounds almost frivolous. It's not, but it sounds to people who don't know. So if I start by legitimizing it, for
Like
yeah,
educating people, yeah?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Then and then I can say, but if you read Charley's book, he'll give ideas how to do it right, how to do it safely.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and thank you for mentioning that, because you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you retired from nursing because of your cardiac concerns, and you had 6 stents, you say? And in a clinical trial, that would obviously rule you out of working with
Absolutely.
MDMA. The name of the book is Listening to Ecstasy.
The transformative power of MDMA. Don't forget that part.
Transformative power of MDMA. Absolutely. So in your situation, how do you manage that? You said you still...
I take an extra beta blocker.
Wow. That's wonderful. And
I've never had a problem ever. I've
wow.
done it over, I would guess, over 80 times in my life. Never had a problem.
That's quite incredible. And, as nurses, you probably know what you're doing. I hope that's...
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We've consulted. We know people, I can't say who, but we've consulted experts. And they said, as long as you're not having any problems, just take an extra beta blocker before you do it.
That's great. That's great. That's inspiring. Absolutely. So I want to ask you some other kind of, I don't know, beyond nursing questions.
Go
One
for
of
it.
them is, given the turmoil in the world and the way things are right now, what is the point of psychedelics and MDMA? What's the point of doing this and trying to help bring these forward into the public spaces?
Well, there are two separate ways. Number one, you're still trying to help these poor people who have this debilitating PTSD, depression, and some of these people just feel that they don't even want to live. It's so bad, or they're on SSRIs, and it's just horrible. So if I don't care about the turmoil of the world, I care about you. The turmoil of the world, there's very little I can do, but I can help you. And that's what I think. As far as personally, it's a vacation. Anytime I do anything, when the pandemic first hit, it hit in March, might have been July 4th. We were still on lockdown. And we did a combination with somebody had given us some MDA and cannabis. I was in bliss. I was blissed out. And I didn't think of anything what's going on in the world. It's just me and my husband in our bedroom with beautiful music, a big bed. And it was a vacation.
I love that. There are people that argue that these, sometimes people are trying to escape with these, but hearing it as a vacation, I've heard it described as like taking the sacred pause, taking a moment to just have a reset. And it seems like a different perspective as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That sounds really lovely.
It is. And you know what? Anytime I do any kind of medicine, I forget how old I am. I become ageless, which is, I'm almost 72. So to be ageless, it's lovely.
Mm.
That's all I can say.
When we spoke before, just before we went live, you were mentioning that it also allowed you to, how did you say it? Something about feeling more of a sense of joy or play instead of everything being like hard and work and struggle. Could you say more about that?
It is play. We use these medicines, mostly MDMA. See, I don't like to do things outside except for MDMA because it to me it's the most user friendly, and it helps me enjoy beauty. We've gone to so many parks, and we went to a place called Bouchard Gardens in British Columbia, in Victoria, outside of Victoria. Oh my God, it was the Garden of Eden.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was stunning. And I appreciate joy. I appreciate nature. But another thing that I have to mention, that without even trying, I've learned, and this is important for me and actually for many people. I've learned to, I lost the word, sorry.
You're talking about
forgive.
Oh,
I forgive myself for losing words.
yeah.
I have learned to forgive my ex-husband and my mother.
Wow.
And that's something that I don't think I ever would have without these medicines. And it's so, yeah. So even though I have joy, even when it's joyful, I'll sometimes take time out. If we're in the apartment together, whatever substance we're using, we'll take time apart. And I tend to work on myself. I've actually listened to hypnosis under MDMA for weight reduction. And I will share this. Every Saturday night or Sunday or Friday, depending, is a date night. We take one night a week, and it's our date night. And I do cannabis, and I do a nice dose. Well, this past turned out to be Sunday night. I did a little bit, whatever. I can only do edibles because of a problem with my vocal cords. I did a little more than I usually do, but I said, whatever, I will use it. And I started working on myself and working on just talking to myself. And like the one thing that I always work on is my weight issue. And I remember thinking that, if I say I'm just going to buy one bag of Kit Kats and eat one Kit Kat a day, I'm like, who do you think you're kidding? That's exactly what I said to myself. I'm like, I'm right. I can't bring it into the house. I'll never eat just one.
So it sounds like you're able to use this as an opportunity for some truth telling.
Yeah.
With more compassion and forgiveness.
Absolutely. So when we do this, so even though it's joyful because we're alive, and that's the beauty, we're alive, we can explore, we can appreciate what we have. I'm alive, and in order to stay alive, I have to work on myself.
Yeah. Shelley, I was wondering if you would share a little bit about your healing journey with grief and your experience with your son, because I think that is such a powerful, lesson as a bereaved mother to another bereaved mother. Yeah, I would love if you wouldn't mind sharing some.
Okay, I get a little teary, but so, oops.
This way. There we go.
Yay. This is my son, Scott.
Hello, Scott. Yes.
So Scott had a lot of pain. He was 39 years old. He had a lot of pain, physical pain, emotional pain. He had demons. He was in and out of hospitals as a kid. We went through a lot with him.
Mm-hmm.
And as an adult, he preferred to work for himself, and what he enjoyed doing was carpet cleaning and carpet dyeing, and he loved it. But he was carrying a lot of heavy equipment, which screwed up his back, something awful, and screwed up his neck. And he was in terrible, terrible pain. And he went to pain clinics, and the doctors would give him something, but they wouldn't give him enough. They thought he was trying, he was a drug addict, when the only medicine he really used was MDMA.
Really?
Yeah. So
did that help his pain?
It gave him a respite.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it helped his pain per se, I don't know. I never really asked him, honestly. But what happened was May 13th, I got a phone call that he died. Wow. And it actually took us a year and a half before we found out what it was, what happened, why he died. But so this is May 13th. On May 2013, on May 22nd, we had planned with 40 other people to go to Prospect, to a park here in Brooklyn, to do MDMA. And we do this, we go to the park once or twice a year, and as many people as we can invite, and we do MDMA. And it's wonderful. People make friendships, and it's just bonding. It's just beautiful. So people said, is Shelley going to go? And I'm like, absolutely. I mean, people use MDMA for PTSD. Why can't I try and use it for grief? So the day of that Saturday, May 22nd, after we had all taken the medicine, about an hour and a half later, those who wanted to participate went into a little bit farther away, went into a circle. Mm-hmm. And there were actually 3 other people who were grieving. Mm-hmm. And after they spoke about their grief, it was my turn. And somebody had put this picture wrapped it up. So I took it out and I looked at it and I started crying. And then Charley said to me and the group, he said, Shelley, what I didn't want to tell you was that the day he died, when we were sitting on the couch, I could feel his presence and I could see him. And he smiled down on us and he said, I'm free. Mm. So with that, I exploded with pouring out of tears. I emptied myself of my grief. Mm. While I was emptying myself, I was just sobbing and sobbing. While I was emptying myself, I could feel the people who were in that circle. I could feel them coming towards me. I could feel people standing behind me, holding my head, my shoulders, my arms. I could palpably, really feel the energy, the loving energy of these people. Mm. And I realized afterwards, because I emptied myself of the grief by sobbing it out, I was empty, so I was able to accept their love. Mm. And I could I mean, I'm not religious or nothing woo-woo, but I felt it. I felt the love. I felt this. And when I opened my eyes, that was the weird thing. When I opened my eyes, I didn't see people for a few seconds. The only thing I can describe it is like spirits. And dark spirits, but not dark in a bad way, just spirits. Mm-hmm. And then it cleared and I saw all my friends. And I said, thank you. Thank you for helping me with my grief. Wow. And then I told Charley earlier that after it's finished, I want to dance. And we danced to a piece of music. He had brought a little player, And we danced to a song called I'm Alive.
Mm.
First we danced to Stand By Me. And then we danced to I'm Alive. And the only time I get teary is when I tell this story. That's it.
Well, you're welcome. Yes.
Yeah, it's the only time I cry.
Yeah.
Because I see he's on my phone. See? Oops.
Of course.
He's on my phone. I see him every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's so incredible that you were able to have those people around you and that it sounds like you felt really safe with the people you were with to release or process whatever those emotions were and be held in that loving way, which is so wonderful.
Well, somebody emailed Charley a couple of days later and said, I never want to go to a regular wake again. This is the way to do it. Yeah.
The wakes of the future. How do we get a map study funded about grieving?
Well, then people would have to die.
I mean, that's something to be said. And, actually, that's interesting thinking about it like this. I know that a lot of times MDMA does have that impression that it's a pleasurable drug, right? Like it's mostly, I don't think our audience necessarily thinks that, but people think that it tends to be just a feel-good experience. But it sounds like it allowed you to be with your feelings more or something.
Yeah.
What would you say?
It allowed me to accept. It allowed them to give, because we were all on it. It allowed them to really pour their hearts out to me, give it to me, and for me to accept it and not think anything of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a really powerful teacher, I think, about the power of community and being able to let your heart be soft, right?
Well, when I tell this story, and people know I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse. I graduated nursing school 50 years ago. I'm almost 72 years old, and I'm talking about an illegal drug. And I talk about how it really helped me. It also, in my opinion, it also kind of legitimizes it. So yeah. It bothers me when people say, oh, that's illegal, or yeah, it is legal. It'll be legal hopefully soon. But all these medicines, when used properly, can really be great in one way or another.
Absolutely.
That's all I can say. It's about respecting these medicines.
Yes.
All of them.
That actually leads me to my next question is, what are some of the perils you see of the mainstreaming of psychedelics?
Yeah, people get cocky and they think that they can do it. One of the things that Charley does in his book is he writes how to do it the right way, so that there won't be problems. People who buy these pills at a rave or at a festival, they don't know what they're getting, and that's when problems happen. Or they take too much because they don't care, and that's when problems happen. And what's going to happen is it like back in the 60s when things were coming out, and they were actually even very useful back then, but people were abusing them and using them incorrectly, and it gave it a bad name, and people, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's a dangerous drug. But it's not if you do it right. And my fear is that these people are going to try and make money off of it and cut corners, like some of these ketamine clinics. A lot of them are very respectable and they respect the patient, the client. But I heard of somebody who went for a underground mushroom experience for depression, and this person had that 5 hours later, the sitter was kicking the person out. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. The person wasn't ready. And it's going to give all these things a bad name. When they're used properly and respectfully, they are so wonderful. People can come off SSRIs if they do so, if they have a good response. And it's not the medicine, it's what happens afterwards, the integration. That's more important. And a lot of people
Ding, ding, ding. Let's underline that. Yes,
a lot of people think that, oh, I have depression, I'm gonna do a mushroom trip, or I'm gonna do an MDMA experience, and it's a magic bullet. It isn't. And that's where people get it wrong. It's not. You have to really work on it. It took me years, just without even thinking, to be able to help with my relationship to my mother, my ex-husband. Years. And that's because I wasn't doing integration, because I wasn't thinking about it. But the only way to really use these medicines properly is proper integration.
Yes. I think some of the concerns we've heard from other guests on our psychedelic chat is that a concern around mainstreaming these medicines or making them legal even is that they will be very drug focused or psychedelic focused, not the process of the integration. Because it sounds like what was helpful for you with this experience of losing your son was the MDMA was an adjunct for you to be able to be in relationship with people that could love you and hold you through a process.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It scares all of us. We have chats about it. And we are nervous in my whole community here in Brooklyn. We are nervous that people are going to abuse these things and not use them correctly.
Yeah. And just make it another drug you take.
And then the government will come down on it and say, whatever, it's going to need, I don't know, triplicate forms. That's how we used to do it in the old days.
More gatekeepers.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for what you've shared so far. I would love to just ask people to please add any questions into the chat. And if you're feeling ready, maybe we could take a question or two. What do you think, Shelley?
Sure.
You ready? Okay, well, let's see if we've got a good one here. Also, thank you to Andrew, who's running the back stuff right now. Aubrey Beck says, do you think feeling ageless is a common feeling?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Because it lightens you up. Whatever you're doing, it lightens you up. You don't think about, oh, I'm old and I can't do this. Nah, you're just having fun, or you're deep in whatever you're in, and you don't think about how old you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's an important feeling.
Yeah. It is. It's wonderful.
Here's another question from Faith saying, how do you ensure that you have a safe plug to get these medicines? And how do you protect against fentanyl lacing?
Test.
One more time for the cheap seats in the back. Test. Can you do you feel comfortable saying a little more about that?
Sure. You can buy a test kit for MDMA on dancesafe.org, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And I actually have fentanyl strips. They're sitting in my refrigerator. Yep. When the person we get it from comes to the house, even though he says, oh, it's tested, we test it right in front of him.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's very smart. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good question. Okay, Kimberly Yee, this covers our faces, but we'll read it. I've noticed how pricey it is to obtain training for facilitating and preparing and integrating people through journeys. Even if I felt comfortable investing so much in training, there's no guarantee that as psilocybin becomes legal, I won't still need to obtain more credentials. I am an RN and a new family nurse practitioner, not currently working, and truly feel called to this work due to a variety of personal and professional experiences that have helped shape me into a space holder of deep, loving presence.
Ooh, I like that.
That question that I can't quite see. Let me see if I can find the. Is there a little more we can see here?
I've not.
Let me find it. I've not. Oh, that's as far as we go. Oh. Let's see. Is there any more to that, Kimberly? I'd love to hear. Well, yeah, let's hear it. That's, I think, what Kimberly's talking is to pricing and then not really being able to sure if you can work with it or not. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't think underground therapy is, this is my personal experience. I don't think underground therapy is going anywhere. And even, I know it's pricey, SIIS and all those other places. I do know some people who have worked with people who've been doing it for years, and they kind of apprentice with them. And it would be less expensive because you can't, you really need training. There's no, I couldn't do it. If somebody asked me to sit for them now, I'd have to say, you know, that I can't help you. I can sit here and make sure you're safe. I can walk you to the bathroom. I can give you food. That's about it.
Well, that's sitting, isn't it? I mean, I guess maybe that's a question at Shelley, is like, what's the difference to you in your mind around between sitting and guiding?
Never having seen it, I think that's I'm not sure, quite honestly. I mostly know people who are therapists who do sitting, and they do guide. I think but the number one thing I will say, which I forgot to mention before, if you want to sit or to learn to sit for somebody doing psilocybin or MDMA or even LSD, you need to know what it feels like yourself.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Like, I was wondering your opinion about that. Do you think it's important for us practitioners to have a psychedelic experience in order to do this work?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Why do you think that? It's just so you can get why. I think you need to see the background, like why people want to do this, what it makes you feel like. Like when I do MDMA, I've seen people who vomit, and I personally haven't. I've had it the other way, so I take Imodium to prevent. If I'm not home, I take some Imodium. But you need to know what it feels like. What are you going to go through? So you can say, well, you know, as you're climbing, you may want to sit down. You may feel a little like with psilocybin, I always get nauseated. Yeah.
And you might want to say, you know, some people get nauseated. You can learn it, but if you actually experience these things, it's always nicer to know that you've done it.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree with you. I think it helps people feel like they know the territory. You know the territory.
Yeah.
I do ketamine assisted therapy with people and had training with it and experienced it myself. And I've met other practitioners that are like, oh, I would never do that. Like, oh, I don't need that. And it's like, they have no idea what it feels like to be coming out of ketamine, or you know, there's clinics that I know of that put people out the front door 45 minutes after they've started their ketamine session. It's like, the care is really missing.
Yeah.
So, and just to play devil's advocate, there's plenty of us nurses that have that are excellent hospice nurses and never died yet, and plenty of labor and delivery nurses that haven't had babies yet, so that are good. So I don't know. It's kind of a
yeah, right. But I that's my personal experience. But as far as, I know they're pricey, but in the long run, it may be very worth it. If I were younger, that's what I would do. I would invest the money, learn the proper way. Even if I end up working underground, at least I've had the training, unless I'm with somebody who I know, that I respect, and who's really, I've heard only good things, and they're willing to take me as an apprentice. Different story. Then that I would do also.
yeah.
But yeah,
Well, Susan McBride, it looks like Susan McBride just shared the best place to learn to sit is holotropic breath work training, where you spend 2 years holding space in non-ordinary states of consciousness. So thank you, Susan.
okay.
I think that is an option.
I've done holotropic breath works when I first started psychedelics, and honestly, it didn't do anything for me. Maybe now I have to try it again. I don't know.
Maybe have a different approach to it. Absolutely.
I was pretty naive about everything when I did it. We're talking about the early, maybe 2004, 5.
Yeah. Thank you. What's another good question here? Let's see. Anne Shulgin used to talk about the value of working on shadow material with psychedelics and how MDMA reduces the feelings of shame. Can you speak to this?
I've never had a feeling of shame personally. Mm-hmm. So I really, I not ever taking care of any patients with it. I understand what the question is, but that's probably where integration fits in. I mean, if the patient, if the client or patient is a victim of sexual abuse and they feel shame over that and they use MDMA, integration is where they learn it's not their fault. And so integration therapy beforehand, it's not just the MDMA experience, it's everything that you need to get to help with this.
And I think you did allude to it a little bit about, you said that you were thinking about issues around weight. I think things even as simple as body image and things like that are, related to shame. And I wonder how that might feel. Especially one part I recall in your book talking about you guys had gone to a festival and got to that really fun tent that you got to. I was like, there wasn't a lot of shame there, but had there maybe been another sober time, you might have been a little more, I don't know, shy or concerned. I think you guys might have to buy the book and listen to that one. But I mean,
I think though the question more was about using MDMA and like for feeling like a victim, and that was what I got from the question. But it's MDMA is just a part of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And it may take more than one session.
May very well, yes. Let's see this next question. Kimberly Yee, thank you. Curious if you'd like to share more on why you alluded that underground therapy isn't moving the needle. I'm not sure. I didn't quite hear that, but can you say more?
Isn't moving
the needle. Oh, I think what you said was it wasn't going anywhere. So
right. No. I mean that just because because it's going to become legal, there are people who cannot necessarily afford or feel uncomfortable going to their doctor, and sometimes underground therapy is the only thing that'll be available to them.
Got it. Yeah.
And it's not going anywhere. In other words, it's going to be around. That's what I meant. Yeah. It's not going to, just because MDMA therapy may become legal, there's still going to be underground therapists.
Yes. And so I think you're saying that there might be ways to get training and mentoring with people that are working underground, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I hope that kind of clarifies, Kimberly, what you were asking.
Mm.
What's another good question we can talk about? Resources for Living Well says psilocybin has been decriminalized in Colorado. With training, is there a liability policy available for qualified advanced practice nurses working with psychedelics with clients? A liability policy available.
Hmm.
I
I
think
don't know.
I have no idea. Maybe we need to see if we can get an psychedelic insurance provider on psychedelic chat and talk with us at
Yeah, yeah.
another
I have no
one.
idea.
Love any other questions? Because if not, then I have a question for you. But just checking. Last call for questions. Okay, I'm gonna go with my question. If you could go back and give your younger self a bit of advice, what would it be?
Aha. First of all, I would say um, don't settle.
Hmm,
That's number one, especially in relationships.
don't settle.
Don't settle. But now I can bring up this little thing that I wrote.
Yes, please.
So here it is. When I was in nursing school, we had a yearbook for our senior year, and we were asked under our picture. We were told to give them a quote, and I don't know why I put this quote. I don't remember where I got it from, but I will read it to you. You can have two choices in life. You can dissolve into the mainstream, or you can be distinct. To be distinct, you must be different. To be different, you must strive to be what no one else but you can be. And the person who wrote that was Alan Ashley Pitt.
Mm,
That was not me back after graduation.
you weren't
It
quite you.
No, that became me 20, I figured it out 27 years later.
The process of becoming.
The process of becoming. Yeah.
Beautiful. That sounds like you're still in that process.
Oh, I am.
And yeah, is there anything you'd like to share about what you're up to currently, if you feel safe and comfortable talking about what's up to
Sure.
you? Yeah.
Sure. So I've been playing with cannabis.
Mm,
My husband and I have a date night every week.
mhm.
And because of my age, over the years, we discovered that cannabis helps. And what I've been doing is playing with cannabis and energy.
Mm.
And I'm able to actually focus energy to run down to where it's important without touching myself and having an orgasm.
Wow.
I have found that I was playing with it more the other night because I took an edible and I guess it was a little bit more than I expected. So I was pretty stoned. But Charley actually gave me time in the bedroom alone to play with it.
Wow.
And I found I was playing with the energy like crazy. Um, Touching, for example, I could touch my arm and have the energy from the arm circulate downward.
Wow.
I would just picture it going down. And then I was able to stop it by putting in my mind a shield. Now, they say that the brain is the largest sex organ. So I said, okay, let's see how well I can use it. So I'm able to stop and start orgasms.
Wow.
I'm able to do it without my feet, without touching, or with just touching a different part of my body. And let's just say for a 71-year-old, you should be jealous.
I think I am. You're an inspiration, Shelley. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Psychedelic Chat. I mean, I think if your younger self knew this was where you were going to be at 71, she'd be amazed, right? So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for sharing this with us. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out if they want to learn more about what you're up to or what Charley's up to?
Well, they can email directly, shelleywininger@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm hoping to start either a TikTok or a little YouTube
Mm,
covering all my playing with cannabis, because I have lots more to I explore every time, and I have a lot of information to help for a better sex life. It's all personal, nothing clinical. I'm just telling you what I'm doing,
that's
and it
awesome.
works.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so, so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll see you next for our next psychedelic chat. Bye, everybody.